But before you go calling me a tit in the comments, why?
Okay, Tit, how about we start with the beginning?
First of all, the game leaves nothing up to the player's interpretation. Paths of progression are clearly signified by non-diegetic symbols telling you where to go and even what mechanic is needed to get past it.
Right off the bat, in the opening section where you complain the game is signaling what you're supposed to do, you start it with footage of the moment where you're given the saw blade upgrade for the shield, granting you the ability to shield toss, which isn't just instrumental in your survival, but is required to progress through many areas of the game. You want players to be able to walk past this upgrade and end up soft-locked? This is why I wouldn't hire a video editor even if I could afford one, because you end up making yourself look like a tit with your own footage. But let's put aside this one horrible visual example that embarrassingly opens the video. Let's extrapolate it onto the rest of the weapons. In Doom 2016, a casual player could easily overlook weapons they came across. Yeah, maybe you didn't overlook them, I didn't, most people watching these videos probably didn't, but millions play these games, and I've personally witnessed people overlook important weapons and even forget weapons had alt-fire modes. id Software saw the same thing, so they used an arcadey retro aesthetic to make weapons floating pickups in Doom Eternal so you couldn't miss them, much like how you'd see a weapon presented to you in something like Unreal Tournament from the 90s. It wasn't about immersion, it was about gameplay. But some people didn't like how gamey Eternal was in its presentation. Now, for the Dark Ages, they've found a compromise. They keep the more serious and immersive feel by having it something that is dropped down for you in a capsule, and they make it something the player can't miss by making it a literal objective point. I think this satisfies both sides. But you really want to open your video with a clip complaining that picking up new weapons is part of campaign progression? Okay. Jesus, we're not even 1 minute into this video. We are not off to a good start.
Having the player see a key through a window, that's not enough. They need to have a floating line coming off it so you can see its location from all possible angles. Not only is what to do clearly signposted so there's no sense of discovery or problem solving, but you can only climb what the devs see fit, only grapple where they tell you you can do so.
So the key signaling. I don't care about this, maybe you do, but this isn't a game about feeling lost and finally finding the key. If the maps weren't gigantic in a game that's supposed to be moving along fluidly, I think you'd have more of a point. But we already spend too much time here. I certainly didn't need another 20 minutes tacked on because I overlooked the location of the blue key, looking at a map with 15 secret locations wondering which one has it. No thank you. And, excuse me, no sense of discovery or problem solving? Many secrets are literally built around you figuring out your way in. They're marked on the map because if they weren't, these levels would take hours to find secrets, and then he'd be here complaining about pacing. So you can see where the goodies are, but you have to look around to see if you gotta jump off the map, look for a bashable wall, look up and find a breakable gear. Let's not pretend this was all automatic. And let's not pretend that if it weren't done the way it is, that he wouldn't be here complaining he couldn't find all the secrets, or that he did find them but it made the game way too long. But this next part misses the point so badly, it's astonishing that this guy goes on to actually call himself a game developer.
For example, these green corpses protruding from the walls somehow mean that you can grapple to them. They just yoink you up from point A to point B. And considering these are never used in combat scenarios, they might as well have just been stairs for what they do mechanically.
Okay, first the snarky attitude behind his performatively bewildered, somehow these green statues let you grapple to them. It betrays his weird bias, where in the same video he goes on to talk about God of War puzzles. But in those same puzzles, it's not like it makes any more sense for there to be random gears that get frozen by the Leviathan axe. It's a video game puzzle mechanic, it's not that deep. But secondly, and this is what's shocking, considering this is supposed to be by someone who knows design, he implies that the absence of grapple points in combat makes them useless inclusions in exploration, that they might as well just be staircases. Let me introduce our good friend to a concept I'm going to call mechanics reinforcement. Including something in exploration or puzzles that requires the use of a player's toolkit is not pointless just because the exact same thing isn't present in combat. These statues are not about teaching the player to grapple. They are ways to add a little fun variety to traversal, but more importantly, they're about reminding the player about the existence of the shield toss. If the theme of this video is that Doom thinks you're stupid, well, some people are, but it's much more likely they just play a video game casually because they heard it was fun. Maybe to some players, the concept of being able to throw the shield doesn't really register as fast as it should, and it's necessary to enjoy the combat. So you've got players forgetting they can even do that when they're under pressure trying to remember to parry and shoot and melee and upgrade and getting frustrated from dying, all that stuff. Instead of including condescending pop-ups that say, remember to use your shield toss, press R1 or whatever, which people will dismiss and ignore, or just leaving them to drown in their own ignorance, they instead include the shield toss in exploration and puzzle solving as a way to get people used to the button naturally, which leads to more experimentation with it during combat. The same goes for the shield bash. Bashable walls and boxes are used in exploration and puzzles to reinforce the mechanic. This is such a basic design concept, it's unbelievable that this guy doesn't know about it. And since we're complaining that the bashable walls and boxes have markers on them, is he really saying that he wishes you could target and bash every texture in the game? That to find secret areas we would have to try to bash every panel of wall across these giant maps instead of the ones that are indicated, crossing our fingers that we might break one, trying to bash every side of a box until we find the right one?
Someone on the team clearly loved God of War a lot, but completely missed what made these things so engaging in the first place. When you threw the Leviathan axe, it would embed itself in a mechanism to keep a contraption open. It then removed one of Kratos' most powerful weapons, and they would then introduce combat so he'd have to fight with his fists while the axe was inaccessible. Forced constraints and mechanical tests for the player to be able to progress. But in Doom, this isn't done a single time. You throw your shield, walk through the door, and then call it back to you. This might as well has been a keycard for all the complexity adds to the game. This isn't a test of strength of getting by without your most powerful weapon, but an annoyance for you to scour the environment for glowing symbols for you to bash, and then move on.
Oh my god, this is so fucking wrong. God of War's puzzles were not about getting the axe stuck and forcing you to fight with your hands. That happens, maybe once in God of War Ragnarok? The other 100 times you're just throwing your axe and then retracting it when the door closes. Because 1, they're getting casual players familiar with the axe throwing mechanic, and 2, it's fun to throw the axe in a puzzle. There is no doubt about this man's insincerity after seeing him cherry-pick the one time God of War makes you fight without the axe and using it as a summary for the game's overall puzzle theory. Wait, does this even happen? I can't remember it. The footage shows Kratos with the axe on his back, so I don't think this is the footage from the scene he's referencing. Oh, whatever.
Do you know what really fucks with the vibe of the Doomslayer character as a whole? He has weapons that can rip through time and space and can punch through a demon's armored chest like it's a children's papier-mâché art project, but can't bust through 3 planks of wood. Can jump off a building with no issue, but can't clamber over this 4-foot ledge to get the item I need. These are examples of every video game essayist's favourite term to throw around, Ludo-narrative dissonance. Not you. They use these gaps to signify where the rewards might be, but do it in a way that breaks the verisimilitude of the world and believability of what the Doomslayer is actually capable of. By this logic, the best defense against the Slayer would be to fortify hell with a bunch of knee-high walls.
Oh my god, seriously, this guy. This is a silly video game and not a series of novels. Technically, the Doomslayer should be able to knock entire buildings down at this point. Why does he even use guns? Why does he enter the first fight with just a basic shotgun? Where's the rest of his arsenal? Why does Kratos not have all his magic from the last game? Why can't Jill just break this wooden door with her shotgun? My immersion is broken! This video game doesn't make sense! Introducing this whole section on Ludo-narrative dissonance with an obviously sarcastic tone should have been the sign to keep this section of the video on the cutting room floor.
There is quite literally no challenge to be seen outside of combat. Fire trap timing challenges, you can simply walk around while they're still actively spewing flames.
This is not the only fire hazard, it is a fire hazard shown from the early chapters of the game, because he wants the most basic example of it to be the one that represents all of them in your mind. Look at his max health values. He's in the opening chapters, which are essentially tutorials. Maybe show the fire traps in the secret room in hell with the Arachnotron and Hell Knight in it.
Projectiles slowly flying towards you that can be blocked with a single button press.
Jesus, this is the opening shield tutorial in the first 30 seconds of the game that just shows you how to block. Editor, what are you doing? You couldn't at least show the projectile hallway that has an Arachnotron at the end trying to melt you in the distance? I'm not saying these hazard sections get super challenging, but these projectile hallways also appear maybe 3 times in a 20-hour campaign. They're just mechanics reminders, man. Maybe people haven't been using blocks so much and they're only trying to parry. Oh, right, I should be trying to simply block projectiles more. Thanks for reminding me, Doom. Hopefully some tit won't make a video complaining about this helpful reminder.
Spikes protruding from the ground, static, motionless, that do nothing and can be destroyed instantly. If these things were introduced during combat as added challenges, I could forgive it, but they're all explored outside of combat, so what is the point?
You can hear in his voice that he's forcing himself to be upset about something, in his best attempt to mimic the tone of those cringy ragebait channels that get upset about every game they play. They're glowing spikes, man. They appear like 3 times and they give you armor. Just throw your shield and move on. He's not even right about them not appearing in combat, because they appear in the Azrak boss fight as crucial life-saving resources that have saved my Pandemonium runs several times.
You start to notice that a lot of shielded enemies that will cause your shield to bounce or explode on impact, they usually need their metal to be warmed up with gunfire for this explosion to take place, but certain variations of them will start combat with heated shields all lined up in a neat row. And once you notice this, the satisfaction of chain reaction destroying 20 enemies loses its luster because you've peered behind the curtain. This wasn't something you skillfully manufactured yourself, it was set up by the developers, and the enemies are destined to wait there indefinitely until you perform the requisite trick like the dancing monkey you are.
Since we've already brought up God of War, you know what's a big problem in that game? Having nothing to do. Between major combat encounters, there's so much empty running around and boat rowing with no one to kill. And with the Dark Ages going for these big maps, we need small, light challenge combat to pop up so we're still slaughtering. I'm okay with the occasional presentation of a few lines of shield guys to shatter. Throwing the shield is fun, the explosion is cool, and I just got my ass kicked a while ago and I need those resources, so thank you. He even shows in the video that there are lines of shield guys that do have to be overheated before breaking. Who cares if it's not every time? Look man, solo chain gunners that have to be overheated before they can be broken are the biggest pains in the ass in the game in high difficulty, and I don't know anyone who wants to see more of them. Oh, but you wouldn't know anything about that, would you? Because as you so conveniently left for the end of the video because you knew everyone would blow you up for it, you played on Hurt Me Plenty, the normal difficulty. And you're here talking about challenge and balance?
Now, full disclosure, I played on the game's normal difficulty, as I always do, to see what the developers consider a reasonable amount of challenge for the average player, and honestly, I don't know if they thought their target demographic was literally brain dead, but this combat in combination with its puzzles and navigation hand-holding, I honestly felt kind of insulted playing this game.
Listen, I don't judge anyone for playing on normal, or even easy, but they better not come around talking about it being too easy when at any time they could have raised the difficulty or messed with the sliders that are obviously presented for people to play with. But you're seriously complaining about occasional lines of shielded enemies that can be shield tossed for resources during big fights? I don't know about you guys, but when I'm in high pressure combat and I'm almost dead, I look for a way to heal. Around the map, there are health and armor pickups you can simply run over and pick up. This doesn't take a lot of skill, so I guess the devs are calling us monkeys by putting them here, right? If it's insulting to place enemies that can be targeted with the shield toss for armor and health, then I guess the devs must be calling us drooling morons by placing these zero skill demanding pickups around too, right? I guess the original Doom creators were insulting us too. And man, when I play Pac-Man, I sure do feel insulted by the presence of Berserk mode power-ups that take no skill to go pick up. I think it's fun to target enemies with the shield and get resources for it, in addition to also having traditional pickups. If you don't, fine, but one is not more insulting than the other.
Was the upgraded state gun, making it capable of one-shotting most enemies, meaning the majority of my run was this Van Helsing cosplay kit running stakes into demons like it was going out of fashion. Just look at the final boss's face! Why didn't I use other weapons? Well, within a couple missions of finding this gun, I had it and the shield fully upgraded, so why would I intentionally make myself weaker if they're both capable of such brutality?
So this is at least an interesting topic to discuss, weapon balance. He says that he mainly just used the upgraded impaler and the shield for the whole game, and that using something else would have, quote, made himself weaker. Well, yeah, if you use something that's not upgraded compared to something that is, it'll probably be weaker. Good thing the game is littered with opportunities to upgrade any weapon. I hope he's not suggesting that the upgraded impaler is stronger than an up-close super shotgun blast or a parry-charged rocket which can put a cyber demon into daze in one shot. But sure, he felt one gun was powerful enough to carry him, and that's a fair thing to say. It is funny though that every person I see making this comment goes on to show a different gun. Oh, the upgraded impaler is so strong, why would I use anything else? Oh, the upgraded chainball is so strong, why would I use anything else? Oh, the upgraded super shotgun is so strong, why would I use anything else? Oh, I just sit back with the upgraded cycler, why would I use anything else? Well, it's because the game is not designed around gun variety incentive. If this were a game about gun variety, I think you'd have more of a point. If a game's designed fun is around the use of all your guns, just being able to use one is a big design flaw. However, the Dark Ages is designed around your guns of choice, with all your other abilities in consideration. The fun zone of the Dark Ages is block, parry, shield toss, shield bash, melee, falter, reposition, and shoot. If you personally don't find that fun, that's okay. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong to not enjoy it, we don't all like the same stuff. But you can't look at weapon balance in a vacuum and just say, all I used was X, and discard everything else you're doing, because you end up sounding silly. It sounds really silly to say, all I had to do was melee, bash, toss, block, parry, explore, upgrade, and shoot, and I beat the game. Yeah, that's the game. Could the balance be better? Sure. They're looking at balance and difficulty, we'll see what happens. I would welcome more incentive to use other weapons. I would welcome a faster swap speed. But the core fun zone of the game is built around all the other factors, and if you ignore them in your judgment of the game's balance, you're being insincere.
This also had a knock-on effect of making the game's secrets and rewards less, well, rewarding, because I had nothing of consequence to upgrade with said rewards. This runs counter to previous games that required the usage of multiple weapons to get by because of how they managed ammo counts. Here, everything was doable with ease via the stick gun's infinite ammo, the shield, and parrying.
This is, I think, his strongest point, but it's still wrong. If you do feel comfortable with one gun and you feel no need to change, that will absolutely make the discovery of Wraith Stones unexciting. And to a degree, the rubies. But rubies, and to a larger extent gold, are used for much more than just gun upgrades. Gold and rubies are used for melee upgrades. They're used for shield rune upgrades. But sure, weapon balance takes the pizzazz out of some of the exploration eventually. I'll give him that. Maybe it's just me, but by that point, I just enjoyed the secret hunting, so I kept doing it. Hell, even on my 7th playthrough now, my 2nd Pandemonium difficulty playthrough, I struggle to just beeline it through the later levels, even though I know I don't need any of the currencies anymore. I just like completing the exploration, maybe that's just me. The game got me to do it enough in the early game to make me kind of addicted to it.
Doom has parries, a lot of them in fact. It's probably the core mechanic of the game. And don't get me wrong, it's probably its best aspect, but just like with its platforming, it doesn't quite understand what makes parrying engaging. First of all, it's way too easy, not just with its base windows, but also you can parry things when they're apparently off the screen, so your timing and even your positioning seemingly don't matter at all.
Regarding the ease of parrying, I will repeat that this man is playing on normal. A higher difficulty would have put more parry pressure on him, and he could have lowered the parry setting at any moment. There are still issues to iron out with the parry window and spam protection, and this will possibly be a moot point after the updates, but look, this isn't Sekiro. I think the game could and should offer a stricter parry difficulty option, but you're also fighting a room with a dozen demons coming at you, parryable projectiles and melee attacks coming from 4 to 5 different guys at a time. Something he would have noticed if he'd played on a higher difficulty like Nightmare instead of Hurt Me Plenty, where the enemy aggression is cut in half, so he's dealing with half the attacks. Play on Nightmare and then tell me it's a problem that you don't have to literally turn and face every parryable attack to parry it. The mechanics are supposed to combine parries with classic shoot-em-ups and arcade bullet hell design. It's not supposed to be Sekiro.
To have the core manufactured moments we just discussed, you need to have areas where the player fails, and I never failed in Doom the Dark Ages. All enemies do the same exact parryable attack patterns throughout the game's entire runtime.
Yeah man, play on Nightmare, adjust sliders if you need to, and come tell me with utter confidence that you never failed at Doom the Dark Ages, that your shield never broke, that you never missed a single parry.
Combo this with being able to one-shot most of them, and this takes combat from being a frantic fight for your life like in previous games to a slog that I barely needed to pay attention to.
Again, the editing. Being able to one-shot most of them? No, you can't say that while showing footage of an armored Mancubus, okay? Enemies you can't one-shot, especially with a charged Impaler. Mancubus, Whiplash, Cosmic Baron, Witch, Agadon Hunter, Cyber Demon, Armored Anything. What are you talking about?
But even if you try to parry a red attack rather than the correct green ones, your shield will still block it, so you can just spam the button and everything will be fine.
Oh. You are not playing on a skill-appropriate difficulty. On a high difficulty, every block is a decision, because higher enemy damage means higher damage to your shield. Your shield at times can break from 2 or even a single attack when blocked. If you don't want to be able to spam block and just block and parry everything as a result, how about you play on a difficulty where you can't do that? Now, he does actually have a great point when it comes to parryable and non-parryable attacks. I think they went overboard with the parryables. I think making most projectiles red was a great decision, and should have applied to more melee attacks. The Pinky, for example, cannot be parried if he bites you. I would have liked to have seen more of that. I think the Hell Knight should have some unparryable swings. I think the Mancubus's self-defense smash should be unparryable and be an instant shield break on Nightmare to punish you for getting close to him, because you should never get close to him. More thoughtful parry decisions would be welcome. You could even add a few unblockables that can only be avoided, meleeed, or shot with a power weapon. I don't know if it would work for this game, it's just a thought. I would support tweaking the parry design of this game. There you go, you made one good point in the first 10 minutes. The rest of what he says is about the mech, the dragon, and the turret. And yeah, I don't like these sections either. But he saved it for the end of the video for a reason, because it's the least important or interesting thing to talk about. I will say though, the mech sections show the pre-update build which consumes all of your mech charges. Now you're able to use multiple abilities with a full charge, which makes the sections better. It's amazing to me that a video about being treated like a moron by a video game would also be done by someone who played on a difficulty that was below their skill level. That a video made by someone who claims to be a game developer would also fail to recognize basic concepts like mechanical reinforcement. Is this as bad as it gets? I hope it is. I'm sure there's some doom is woke insanity out there, and I'm not interested in riling them up. But if there are some straight up design videos as bad as this one, you guys gotta let me know. I'm excited to see what the updates introduce. More challenge and balance is definitely welcome. I hope a bunch of quality of life improvements are being considered. See you guys soon.